What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. I originally wasn't going to make one of these recap videos for the slate, just 2 games on a Thursday night. Pacers, Bucks, and we had Hawks, Magic in Mexico City, actually, which was pretty cool to watch. Both games ended up being really good, some huge star performances, some takeaways, so I thought, why not? I'll go ahead and make this video, give you all a little bit of extra content, and plus it gives me a chance to finally go ahead and talk about one of my favorite teams to watch in the league so far, a team that I thought could take a jump this year, but has been even better than I personally was expecting, could ultimately be way scarier than I think a lot of people are realizing. So let's go ahead and get into it. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And as always, comment down below some of your takeaways from these games. Let's go ahead and start off with Pacers versus Bucks. Both teams enter this one on the second half of a back-to-back, but more importantly for the Bucks, they come into this one without Damian Lillard, and it's already been a struggle for them to be consistent with him. Without him, it was a complete mess to start this game. The Pacers brutalized the Bucks in that first quarter, went up by as much as I think 18 points, and it seemed like this thing might turn into a blowout. Typically, the Bucks, despite having a really rough defense, are at least able to keep up with teams because of their great offense so far, but without Dame, they just couldn't get anything consistent going. Until the second quarter, when Giannis said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and remind people why I'm one of the best players in the world. And unfortunately for the Pacers, he did that and even more, because in that second quarter, he put up 18 points, and for the rest of the game, he was completely dominant. Every time he got the ball, if the Pacers didn't send a double, Giannis was almost assuredly going to score. He was rumbling downhill, hitting guys with spin moves, with Euro steps, just dunking on people, finishing through contact. I swear he got 50 and ones, it felt like, in this game. He shot 16 of 18 from the line. He was dunking on guys. There was one play where there was like 3 or 4 Pacers around him, and he just rises up and dunks the ball. He was hitting fadeaway mid-range jumpers, pull-up middies, everything. It was one of the most complete offensive performances I have maybe ever seen from Giannis. He came really close to his career high and ultimately put up 54 points to go with 12 boards and 3 assists on 76% shooting. It was hilarious. It felt very Shaq-like watching his dominance out there. And it led to the Bucks not only erasing that massive deficit, but going up by 9 points pretty late in this one with about 5 minutes to go. They had nearly a double-digit lead, and it felt like the Pacers were going to fall to just an unbelievable force in Giannis Antetokounmpo. But the Pacers said, nah, we don't want that to happen. We're going to go ahead and turn up the offense, which they have done pretty much the entirety of the season, but also the defense. They clamped up at the end of this game. Benedict Mathurin played some great defense on Giannis down the stretch, forced some turnovers, forced him to take some bad shots. The rest of the team also clamped up, just really disciplined stuff from the Pacers at the end of this one. It also kind of looked like Giannis just ran out of gas late because he was carrying the offensive load at a pretty ridiculous and unsustainable rate. They really could have used Dame down the stretch, his clutch offense, just to take some of the load off of Giannis, but ultimately did not have him in this one. Chris Middleton has a 3 to go ahead and try and win this one at the end, but he misses it. Some big shots from guys down the stretch between Tyrese, Benedict Mathurin, and Bruce Brown hitting some free throws. The Pacers get out of this one with a win, defeating Giannis in his unbelievable performance to move to 6-3, which is one of the best records in the Eastern Conference so far. I've been extremely impressed with them in the early going of the season, and this is coming from a guy who was a big believer of them in the first place. I made a video in the offseason talking about how the Pacers were building something special, how I really like Tyrese as their offensive generator, as a force on that end, how I like the addition of Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, I like the pieces around him, and how ultimately I thought this team was going to go out there and compete for a playoff spot. But so far, they've been one of the best teams in their conference, mainly doing it through Tyrese and that offensive end. They have the best offense in the league so far, and not just that, according to offensive rating, this is the best offense in the history of the sport up to this point. And a large part of that has been because of Tyrese Haliburton, who went from an all-star last year to one of the best guards, period, in the league to start this season. He is an absolute monster. So far this season, he's putting up 24 points per game, 4 boards, and 12 assists while shooting 50, 40, 90. It's unprecedented levels of high-level efficiency and playmaking from a guy as young as Tyrese. He's just 24 years old and is one of the best offensive engines in the league at this point. He's been absolutely incredible. He hits clutch shots, he creates shots for others, he orchestrates this fast-paced run-and-gun Pacers offense to perfection. They don't do anything that they do without Tyrese Haliburton at the center. So far this season, their point totals have been 143, 125, 105, 104, 121, 125, 152, 134, and in this game, 126. They had 2 games below 120, and one of those was against the Celtics without Tyrese Haliburton. So only once so far this season have they scored less than 120 points when Tyrese is out there playing. At this point, according to NBA.com, Tyrese Haliburton is creating 31.6 points per game on average from his assists. You combine that with his points per game, he's generating this team 55.2 points per game by himself. That's unbelievable, and he's doing all of this while putting up just over 2.5 turnovers per game. The assist-to-turnover ratio is ridiculous. He takes care of the ball. He's an efficient scorer. He's the engine of one of the league's best offenses, the league's best offense of all time at this point. He's been incredible. I can't say enough about how good Tyrese has been. He's one of the best offensive players in the entire world at this point. But while Tyrese is the engine of the whole thing, this team needs the other pieces around him, which also are really effective in this system. Miles Turner continues to build off his great season from last year. He's putting up 17.6 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, 1.8 assists with 1.7 blocks, shooting 40% from 3, the perfect rim protecting stretch big for this type of system. Last game against the Bucks, he drilled 4 threes with 21 points, making them pay anytime you left him open. He's the perfect big to run out there with Tyrese and the rest of these guys. Benedict Mathurin in his sophomore season isn't taking a big statistical leap, but he's still playing really well. And against the Bucks, like I mentioned, played some great defense on Giannis, had some big hustle plays, and put up 26 points, 11 boards, and 2 assists. He's a great weapon in transition, using his athleticism, ability to finish around the basket. They want to see a bit better from him from 3, but for right now, Benedict Mathurin has been pretty good in his role and is having a solid start to the season as a sophomore. Eventually, I believe Mathurin can develop into that second star alongside Haliburton pretty seamlessly. Surrounding these core guys, you've got knockdown shooters who make this whole thing work. Buddy Hield, who's again shooting the hell out of the ball and being a pretty good connecting passer off the bench. Aaron Nesmith is shooting 50% from deep as one of their top 5 scorers, continuing to build on this role that he found last year in Indiana after a rough stint in Boston. Jalen Smith is shooting 66% from deep so far this season for 12 points per game in just 17 minutes, making the most of the run that he gets off the bench and showing that last year's disappointment might have been a fluke. Andrew Nembhard is a great ball handler off the bench who can run the offense with Tyrese off the court. Obi Toppin has been a good transition weapon, although he's not quite having the breakout season that I personally was kind of hoping for. Even more so beyond the statistics, it's just really fun basketball to watch. I find myself watching Pacers games almost every single time they play. I can't take my eyes away because they're going to make something crazy happen in transition if I blink for even a moment. Now, I will say on the other side of things, the defense has been really bad so far. They've been one of the worst Ds in the entire league. Giannis dropped 54 pretty easily on their heads last night, and part of that was because he's just Giannis, but also a lot of that was just not a lot of resistance when he decided to attack the rim. They don't have someone who can stop those big physical, like 3-4 type of players like a Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's one of the bigger holes in their defense, but really just as you look at the personnel in this roster, they don't have a lot of great defenders. It's very clearly a lot more offensive oriented. And a question about how good they can be this season is how much can the defense hold in the moments where they need it most. We saw at the end of this game against the Bucks, they got Giannis into some turnovers, some bad shots at the end. The offense did enough to let the defense get some stops here and there that got them the win. Is that going to be the case most nights when they go up against some of the stars out there like a Jason Tatum, like a Giannis in the Eastern Conference, a Joel Embiid even? How are they going to find ways to slow those guys down, those really physical players that just don't match up well with their defense? Funnily enough, considering the ties these two teams have with trades over the past couple of years, the Pacers feel a lot like the Kings from last year, where they've got this incredible offense led by a star guard, a good supporting big, shooters all over the place, but the defense is shaky and it makes you think, how are they going to hold up in a playoff scenario against some of the other teams that are great in their conference? Like with the Kings last year where they lost to the Warriors, I worry about that a little bit with the Pacers. I think their offense can outgun anybody, but can they get the stops that allow them to actually win games against some of the Eastern Conference's best talents? We'll have to see when it gets to the playoffs. I do believe this team is going to be a playoff team. I believe that going into the season. I still believe it now, even more so now that I've seen them play. But regardless of whether or not they're successful this year, to me, it feels like it's only the beginning for the Pacers. Tyrese is just 23, 24 years old. Mathurin's 21. Miles Turner's only 27. Nesmith is 24. Jalen Smith is 23. Bruce Brown's only 27. Jarris Walker feels like he could be one of their most promising players. I loved him going into the draft, and he's just 20 years old. So for right now, I'm kind of just enjoying the ride with the Pacers. If they can find a way to put together some more consistent stops while keeping this offense up, they're going to give some teams fits in the playoffs. They are a really scary potential potential matchup on any given night. Huge shout to the front office for what they've done, really getting through this rebuilding process pretty quick, it feels like. Also shout to Rick Carlisle, who's put these guys in a position to succeed and has put together this offense that has been one of the most fun to watch in the entire league. On the Bucks side of things, I don't have much to say about them outside of Giannis. Really just that the defense continues to be a problem. The Pacers offense is great, like we talked a lot about, but it also felt like at times they just had no resistance on the perimeter. One play is going viral of Malik Beasley seemingly just freezing while someone drives by him on the perimeter. It seemed like he thought there was a screen, so someone needs to communicate to him that there's no screen, or he just needs to realize that. I don't know, just a lot of defensive breakdowns that felt really bad, especially down the stretch of this game. It's been a concern all year, and even when Dame comes back, he's not fixing that problem. Secondly, and finally, we saw Hawks versus Magic being played in Mexico City, and it was the return of Trae Young. He has been missing this whole season. Shots not falling at all. It's very reminiscent of his start to last season. But in this game, he kind of looked like the Trae Young that we're used to seeing. 41 points, 4 boards, 8 assists, 3 steals, had 33 in the first half alone. He did end up really struggling to shoot the ball in the second half, shooting just 3 of 13, but knocked down some timely buckets, had some huge passes, and ultimately dimed up DeJounte Murray in the corner for the game-winning 3 that gave the Hawks this win. Hopefully, we see more of this first half Trae Young going forward, because the Hawks so far have held their own, despite Trae really struggling. If he puts together consistent performances, we could see a different version of this Hawks team that could be really scary to a lot of teams in the East. As for the Magic, I'm going to give a big shout to Jalen Suggs. He's been really fun so far this season, particularly on the defensive end. He's one of those hard-nosed defensive pest hustle guys that it feels like every great team needs. He's been exactly that for the Magic so far, and in this one, he was also pretty efficient offensively. 7 of 10 shooting for 21 points, 2 boards, 1 assist, and 6 steals. I love Jalen Suggs' game. If he continues to knock down shots, he's going to be a huge asset for this team. But the shot does need to come along for them to really maximize his talent and the talent of everybody, because so far, the spacing has been awful for the Magic again. It was a problem last season. I made a video coming into this year talking about the Magic and saying, hey, I like their young talent, but the shooting is going to be a big problem if they can't figure it out, which so far have not figured it out. They were missing Wendell Carter Jr. and Gary Harris, who are floor spacers in this one. They both would have definitely helped, but even with them, it's just not been pretty for them shooting the 3 ball. The Hawks really packed the paint in the second half in this one, particularly in the fourth quarter when they erased a big lead from the Magic. They just don't have the personnel to open up the game for Paolo and Franz to be the best version of themselves. It led to some turnovers, just bad shots because they're forcing it. They're trying to get inside because they can't hit those threes. They need some shooting surrounding these two stars to really elevate their game. So far, have not hit those outside shots. But anyways, with that being said, those are my takeaways from these 2 games. Let me know down in the comments below what your takeaways were, and let me know what you think about the Pacers. Could they be a problem in this year's playoffs? Are they still a year away? And ultimately, where do you put Tyrese Haliburton in the league? Do you think he's like a top 10 offensive player, top 5 offensive player? Do you think he's an all-star, all-NBA caliber player this season? Let me know all that and more down below. As always, I really appreciate y'all watching. Like I mentioned earlier, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.